By the end of this lecture, you will understand the difference between benefits and costs and why it is a little bit more difficult to measure the benefits compared to the costs. The benefits that we'll be looking at are driving time saved as well as lives saved for this highway project. When we value driving time, we look at both the producers, the time saved by the producers and the time saved by the consumers, and we think about an issue such as travel time that a highway will provide for them. For producers, we value time saved in a straightforward manner, right? So the reduction in costs of supplying goods and services increases the supply, right? So it shifts the supply curve to the right. There's a social surplus. In other words, society overall benefits because we have more products being supplied to them. Okay, so that's easy on the production side. And the consumers obviously have more products, so the price decreases. Okay, that makes society better off, all right, as a whole, when we reduce travel time. The more efficient something is, the more closer we arrive to our equilibrium. Okay, now, when we measure the benefits to the consumers, it becomes a tricky question because how do we measure the benefits of being able to get from point A to point B in a more effective manner, if it is going to be more effective, all right? So there are two methods we're going to talk about. I'm not going to be talking about the issue of wages in detail, but I'm going to talk about survey-based measures and revealed preferences. For the wage-based methods, those will be discussed in more detail in a later course, but I'm going to focus on these two just for now, okay? Contingent-based valuation is, someone came up with the idea that if we wanted to ask how much people value their time, why don't we just ask them? Okay, so a contingent-based valuation is almost a survey question that asks things like, how much would you be willing to pay to save 5 minutes on your drive to work, right? So it's useful when other options of valuing time are limited. So what this does is it allows the consumer to give a value to their time, okay? Now there's a few problems which are outlined by Diamond and Hausman, in that in the surveys, you have three key issues that occur. What they found was that when a question was asked by itself, people would answer it differently compared to if the question was answered as a list of questions in a survey. Alright, so it had isolation issues. It also had ordering issues. In other words, in what order the questions were asked, it also skewed the results. And finally, the embedding effect. Often people will associate the benefits of a highway in general and not the benefits of this specific project that you are asking about. So they would talk about generalities rather than specifics. So those are some issues that you as a policy analyst will need to take into account when you're using valuation data or survey data when trying to understand whether people will pay and how much they would pay. Another way that economists try to get around this is looking at revealed preferences, taking away from what people say and looking more at what they do. And an example of this is looking at whether people, for example, people who pay more to live closer to work compared to being further away, okay? So the difference between what people would pay to be further from work to gain that 5 minutes, so to speak, is how much we would value their time at, okay? And so this is one of those methods we use to try and reveal their preferences rather than what they say about their time, okay? So these are examples of how we reveal people's time and how we measure their time in numbers. We also value people's lives. Now, there are ethical implications to this, and I just want to really bring that to the fore before we get into more detail, that valuing someone's life is, should not everyone's life be worth $1 billion, right? So I just want to begin by talking about the problem of valuing someone's life. However, economists in a cost-benefit analysis try and participate in this exercise by using things like wages, contingent valuation, and revealed preferences, okay? So when they talk about wages, they ask about how much someone is worth based on their current and future earnings. All right. Now, Keeler is very famous for this sort of analysis. And for example, he states that a 20-year-old female in 2010 would have future earnings of $487,000, and a man slightly higher because of overall higher earnings. So they equate earnings and wages to how much someone is worth, okay? We also look at contingent valuation. So in a survey, for example, you could ask a question, how much do you think your life is worth? But in a different way, okay? One such example is someone paying for an airline ticket, and you would ask them, how much would you be willing to pay for a ticket on an airline with 1 out of 500,000 crashes compared to 2 of 500,000 crashes? In other words, the difference between the person's willingness to pay for option number 1 compared to option number 2 would be how much they value their life at. Okay? Now, a third way, which is probably more practical, is once again revealed preferences. And a good example of this is using airbags, right? So if someone is prepared to pay $350 to put an airbag in their car when there's a 1 in 10,000 chance of dying from not having it, we would say that their life is valued at $3.5 million, right? So how much would you be willing to pay for something that reduces your chances of dying? Okay, now a Harvard professor, Kip Viscusi, values life at approximately $7 million per year. So that's how much he values life, and that's what we're going to be using in this particular analysis. In summary, when we look at the benefits of a particular project, we have to begin by saying that our minimum wage is going to be $20 per hour. All right, so we're going to value time saved at $10 million per hour. And then we're going to say that a life, based on Viscusi's definition, is worth $7 million per person, and we save 10 million lives per year, so we're going to value that at $70 million. In the next part of this course, we're going to be putting these pieces together and finally coming up with our recommendations.